Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is pro-revenge story. This opinion is garbage, my boss declared, glaring at the document on his iPad Pro. He'd been a lawyer for 3 years, and the firm assigned me to him for training, to show me, as junior counsel, how to be a litigator. I despised my boss for multiple reasons. He knew nothing about law, and his writing skills were atrocious. For a litigator, those are critical failures, and the third strike was his complete lack of courage. He was terrified of court appearances. I discovered this when he took me to assignment court, and his hands trembled visibly when it was his turn to speak. Imagine being scared in assignment court, where the only task is setting trial dates. What specifically is wrong with my analysis? I asked, trying to maintain professionalism. Not what I requested, he muttered, turning away to fiddle with his Apple Watch. When I pulled up the email he'd sent me 2 weeks earlier on my laptop, I confirmed that my opinion matched his requirements exactly. I understood his game. He would delete my time entries for writing the memo and claim the work as his own, leaving me far below my billable hours quota for the month. This wasn't new. He'd pulled this stunt before. I knew my memo would appear on a partner's MacBook without my name attached. I was certain because our firm was among the first to implement a sophisticated cloud-based system. We were using Microsoft Teams and advanced document management systems, while other firms were still figuring out basic email. The firm was technologically advanced, but had surprisingly poor cybersecurity, and I discovered how to navigate through the firm's cloud storage, finding evidence of my boss plagiarizing my work. My boss embodied the stereotypical young downtown lawyer image. His Italian leather shoes always gleamed. His custom-tailored suits screamed old money. Everyone assumed he was destined for partnership. Meanwhile, I was clearly going nowhere fast, which probably made him think I was an easy target. Big mistake. The billable hours situation infuriated me. I was already labeled as one of the juniors who wasn't meeting targets, and the head partner was breathing down my neck. Listen, I told the partner during one meeting, he's stealing my hours and taking credit for my work. Welcome to big law, he replied dismissively. Either work harder or work smarter. I couldn't work longer hours. I was already pulling the standard 6-day weeks that downtown lawyers endure, but I could definitely work smarter. That evening, I devised a plan. With the holidays approaching, I prepared a special Christmas gift for my boss. It arrived on his desk on December 24th, 2024, disguised as a memo from his supervising partner. The older partner was notorious for avoiding digital communication, preferring paper trails, so finding a printed memo wasn't suspicious. The forged document contained a complex legal research assignment. My boss immediately forwarded it to me, having his assistant retype it as if it originated from him. The assignment involved intricate maritime law questions, constitutional issues, and jurisdictional analyses. This seems like an extensive project, I said, feigning concern. I'm supposed to be off next week. Is there any flexibility on the timeline? Absolutely urgent, he responded, smirking. Take it up with HR if you want overtime pay. He couldn't verify anything with the partner, who had conveniently left for vacation the previous day. What my boss didn't know was that I'd written my final year law school thesis on almost identical issues. The only work required was reformatting my old research and updating some citations. During the break, I made strategic appearances at the office, sent occasional emails, and logged substantial hours for my extensive research. When everyone returned in January, I sat in my cubicle, surrounded by actual pending work, when my boss approached wearing his finest suit and flashiest Rolex. Where's that maritime law memo? It should have been ready this morning. I have a partnership meeting at noon. Just finished the final draft, I said, handing him the warm pages fresh from the printer. He weighed the substantial document in his hands, smiling smugly before walking away. The aftermath was spectacular. Around 11:45 a.m., I heard the partner's booming voice. What in God's name is this nonsense? Followed by my boss being summoned to his office. The subsequent conversation was loud enough for half the floor to hear. Did you write this? The partner demanded when I was called in. Yes, sir. My name was removed from the cover page, but the content is mine. I worked through the holidays on it. The partner's face turned scarlet. Do you know what this is? It's completely irrelevant to any current case. After I produced the original assignment memo, everything unraveled for my boss. The partners were furious about wasting billable hours on a phantom project, questioning his judgment and competence. He kept his job barely, but things improved for me. The partner required direct copies of all my work, ending the plagiarism. My billable hours remained intact, and I received a substantial holiday inconvenience bonus. Though I eventually left that toxic environment, the memory of the forged memo incident never fails to make me smile. The next one is an entitled people story. This all started about 8 months ago when my sister passed away unexpectedly. She was a single mom to my 6-year-old niece Lily, and I was her only living relative. I got the call on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. The social worker explained that my sister had died in a car accident the night before, and Lily needed a place to stay. Without hesitation, I said I'd take her in. What else could I do? Let my niece go into the foster system? Not a chance. My condo wasn't exactly set up for a kid, but I figured we'd make it work. I had a spare bedroom I was using as an office, but I could easily convert it into a bedroom for Lily. The condo itself was in a decent neighborhood with good schools nearby. Perfect, right? Well, it would have been if not for the HOA and their power-hungry board president. The first few weeks with Lily were rough. She barely spoke and spent most of her time curled up with the stuffed rabbit my sister had given her for her birthday. I took time off work to help her settle in, get her enrolled in the local elementary school, and find a therapist who specialized in childhood grief. We were both grieving, but I had to stay strong for her. About a month after Lily moved in, I got a letter from the HOA. At first, I thought it was just the regular newsletter they sent out monthly, but when I opened it, my blood ran cold. Dear resident, it read, it has come to our attention that you are housing a minor child in your unit. As per the HOA bylaws, Section 7, Paragraph 3, this community is designated as an adults-only community, and residents under the age of 18 are not permitted to reside here permanently. You have 30 days to comply with this regulation or face eviction proceedings. I must have read that letter 20 times, convinced I was missing something. I'd been living in this condo for 5 years and had never heard anything about it being an adults-only community. I immediately called the HOA office and asked to speak with the president, a woman named Deborah who had a reputation for being strict about the rules. I'm sorry, but the bylaws are very clear, Deborah said when I explained my situation. This is an age-restricted community. Children are allowed to visit for up to 2 weeks at a time, but they cannot live here permanently. But I've lived here for 5 years, I argued. I've seen kids around the complex all the time. The couple in Unit 12 has 2 teenagers. Those families were grandfathered in when the bylaw was enacted 3 years ago, Deborah explained, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. New residency of minors is not permitted. My niece just lost her mother, I said, trying to appeal to her humanity. She has nowhere else to go. I'm her only family. That's unfortunate, Deborah replied coldly, but the rules apply to everyone. I suggest you start looking for a new place to live. I hung up, my hands shaking with anger. I couldn't believe this was happening. Lily had already lost so much, and now we were being told we had to move. I didn't even know if I could afford a house in this area, and moving would mean Lily would have to change schools just when she was starting to adjust. I decided to call a lawyer. My friend recommended someone who specialized in housing disputes, and I managed to get an appointment for the next day. The lawyer, Mark, listened to my story and reviewed the HOA bylaws I brought with me. This is interesting, he said, flipping through the document. The bylaw they're citing was added 3 years ago, but there's a problem with how it was implemented. Federal law prohibits discrimination against families with children, with a few exceptions. One exception is housing designated specifically for older persons, but there are strict requirements for that designation. So what does that mean for us? I asked, feeling a glimmer of hope. It means we might have a case, Mark said. The Fair Housing Act protects families with children, and from what you're telling me, this HOA doesn't meet the criteria for exemption. They can't just decide to be adults only without following specific federal guidelines. Mark explained that we should respond to the HOA letter formally, citing the Fair Housing Act and requesting a hearing with the board. If they proceeded with eviction, we would fight it in court. I sent the response letter, and as expected, the HOA didn't back down. Deborah called me personally to inform me that they were moving forward with eviction proceedings. I could hear the smugness in her voice when she told me I had made a poor choice by challenging them. While all this was happening, I was trying to keep things normal for Lily. She had started school and was slowly making friends. Her therapist said she was showing signs of improvement, and I didn't want to disrupt that progress by telling her we might have to move. I kept the HOA troubles to myself and focused on giving her stability. The eviction notice came exactly 30 days after the first letter. Mark filed a countersuit immediately, alleging discrimination under the Fair Housing Act. We were given a court date for the following month. As the court date approached, something interesting happened. Neighbors started coming to my door offering their support. Many of them had no idea about the adults-only bylaw and were shocked that the HOA was trying to evict a child who had just lost her mother. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, revealed that she had voted against the bylaw when it was proposed, arguing that it would destroy the community feel of the complex. Deborah pushed it through because she doesn't like noise, Mrs. Johnson told me. She claims it's about maintaining property values, but really, she just doesn't like children. Several neighbors agreed to testify on our behalf, stating that children had always been part of the community and that the bylaw had been controversial from the start. Mark was pleased with this development, saying it strengthened our case. On the day of the court hearing, I was a nervous wreck. I had to take Lily with me since I couldn't find a sitter on such short notice. She sat quietly in the back of the courtroom with Mrs. Johnson, coloring in a book I had brought for her. The HOA lawyer presented their case first, arguing that as a private community, they had the right to establish age restrictions. He cited the bylaw and emphasized that I had violated the terms I agreed to when I purchased my condo. When it was our turn, Mark expertly laid out our case. He explained the requirements under the Fair Housing Act for age-restricted communities and showed that the HOA did not meet those requirements. He called several neighbors to testify about the community's history with children and the questionable way the bylaw had been passed. Then Mark called me to the stand. I explained my situation, how I had taken in my orphaned niece because I was her only family, how we were both still grieving, and how being forced to move would further traumatize a child who had already lost everything. The judge, an older man with kind eyes, listened carefully to both sides. When the arguments were done, he called for a brief recess. When he returned, he looked directly at the HOA lawyer and Deborah, who was sitting smugly behind him. "I've reviewed the evidence and arguments presented today," the judge began. "The Fair Housing Act is clear on this matter. For a community to qualify as housing for older persons and legally exclude children, it must meet specific criteria. This HOA does not meet those criteria." I could see Deborah's face turning red as the judge continued. Furthermore, the manner in which this bylaw was implemented appears to have violated the HOA-owned procedures for amending bylaws. But even setting those procedural issues aside, I find the attempt to evict a recently orphaned child particularly troubling. The judge looked over at Lily, who was still coloring, oblivious to the proceedings that would determine her future. "This court finds in favor of the defendant," the judge declared. "The eviction proceedings are dismissed, and the HOA is ordered to cease enforcement of the age restriction bylaw until such time as they can demonstrate compliance with federal housing law." He then looked directly at Deborah. "Additionally, I am ordering the HOA to pay the defendant's legal fees in this matter, and I strongly suggest that the board revisit not just this bylaw, but their understanding of what it means to be a community." I couldn't hold back my tears as the judge's decision sank in. We could stay. Lily wouldn't have to be uprooted again. As we left the courtroom, several neighbors gathered around us, offering congratulations and support. Mrs. Johnson hugged me tightly and whispered, "It's about time someone stood up to Deborah." In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. The HOA board called a special meeting to review all bylaws for compliance with federal and state laws. Several board members, embarrassed by the court case and the negative attention it had brought to the community, called for Deborah's resignation. She refused at first, but when it became clear that she would be voted out, she stepped down. The new board president, a retired lawyer named Tom, made it his first order of business to officially rescind the age restriction bylaw. He also came to my condo personally to apologize for what we had been through. "This should never have happened," he told me. "We're supposed to be a community that supports each other, not one that kicks out a child who has nowhere else to go." It's been 6 months since the court case, and life has settled into a new normal. Lily is doing well in school and has made several friends in the complex. We still miss my sister terribly, but we're healing together day by day. As for the HOA, the new board has been working to rebuild trust with residents. They've organized community events, including a children's play day that Lily absolutely loved. It's not perfect, but it feels like a real community now, one where a little girl who lost everything can find a home. I learned a valuable lesson through all of this. Sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it seems like the odds are stacked against you. And sometimes when you stand up for yourself, you end up standing up for others too. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I'm actually excited to share this story. This is currently taking place at a casino in Ontario, Canada, where I work. And it's a bit complex, so I apologize for the long read. There's a summary at the end. To start, we're technically government employees. We're also unionized, which might sound strange. Yes, I'm a bartender in a restaurant where everyone is a unionized government employee. You can probably guess what kind of environment this creates. There are 3 full-time bartenders on staff. As someone who has bartended or managed bars for the past 15 years, I can tell you we get a raw deal here. I've never earned so little in the service industry, but we have a pension and benefits, which is pretty valuable. "Hey, here's your 50 cents from my tips," one of the servers said last week, sliding coins across the bar. "I rounded up to $1 because you're working so hard back there." We work intensely while watching the servers count their hundreds at the end of each shift, while we only earn what comes directly through the bar. The servers are required to tip out 2% of drink sales only. They make these condescending comments daily. "Remember," they love to say, "the agreement says you can't serve tables." According to our collective bargaining agreement, CBA, bartenders aren't allowed to serve tables, and the servers never let us forget it. Here's where it gets frustrating. They expect us to run their food, clean their tables, and still only tip to the exact penny. During a recent shift, I approached our manager about the issues. "The servers are outside smoking again," I said. "We're covering their tables and getting nothing for it." "That's the servers' territory," the manager replied, barely looking up from their phone. "If you have concerns, file a grievance." We've repeatedly discussed with management how servers abandon their tables, take excessive smoke breaks, spend time on their phones, and do the absolute minimum. Meanwhile, we can't even take our guaranteed breaks. 2 15-minute breaks and 1 30-minute break per shift. Management's response about hiring more bartenders? Budget constraints. That's when we decided to act. The 3 of us met with our union representatives and detailed every aspect of our jobs, management's obligations, and floor staff responsibilities. We now have laminated cards behind the bar with highlighted sections of our exact job parameters and guarantees. 3 weeks ago, we started implementing changes. A server tried walking behind the bar to grab drinks. "Sorry," I said, "you'll have to wait. The agreement states only bartenders behind the bar." "But I've always done this," she protested. "New policy. We're following the CBA exactly as written. We started taking our official breaks, which means all drink service stops. Management, who usually spend their time chatting or hiding in their offices, now must cover the bar. They have to make drinks, stock inventory, and polish glassware according to our specific criteria." "I don't know how to make these specialty cocktails," one manager complained during my break. "The recipes are in the manual," I replied, picking up my book. "I'll be back in 15 minutes. The results? After just a few weeks, there are 2 new bartenders in training and 2 more being hired. The servers are starting to understand the situation, and management seems less inclined to hide in their offices. Update. The management structure here is particularly interesting. They operate on a partial P&L, profit and loss bonus system. During a recent staff meeting, our GM proudly announced, "We're hitting our targets." What they didn't mention was how they're achieving those numbers, by consistently understaffing and underordering supplies. "We're out of vodka again," I announced one busy Saturday night. "Just make it work," the supervisor replied from their office. "Make what work? You can't make vodka drinks without vodka," I responded, but they'd already closed their door. I've managed 3 different establishments in my career, 2 nightclubs and a speakeasy. Watching basic items like triple sec, garnishes, and even vodka run out regularly makes me want to pull my hair out. It's bar management 101, but here we are. The management situation feels like a private club more than a professional operation. The GM has filled every management position below them with former drinking buddies and co-workers from their previous jobs. Most have 0 actual bar experience. "Remember when we worked at Murphy's?" They'll reminisce during shifts while ignoring actual operational issues. The online reviews tell the whole story. Last week, a guest posted, "Waited 45 minutes for service. Bartenders were the only ones actually working. The only positive reviews seem suspicious. They're either written by supervisors under fake names or come specifically from customers who sat at the bar. You're the only ones who actually talk to us," a regular told me recently. The servers just disappear. I don't want to criticize the floor staff entirely. They do work hard when they're actually on the floor, but that's the problem. They're rarely there. The bar team ends up being the first and last point of contact for guests because we're chronically without a host or hostess. Our senior bartender, who's been here 7 years and is around 60, often says, "We're not just bartenders anymore. We're the face of this place." He's right. We've had to step way beyond our actual duties just to keep things running smoothly. Just last night, I watched a table sit with their credit card out for 20 minutes. "Where's their server?" I asked another bartender. "Outside on the phone, again." 3rd time this shift. they replied, while we both continued making drinks. The floor staff still makes decent money, usually around $150 on slow nights, regardless of service quality. There's no incentive for them to improve because the casino crowds will keep coming regardless. This is my first union position in the service industry, and it's governed by the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. It's definitely different from any other service job I've held. As the newest hire, it took some convincing to get the other bartenders to stand up for our rights, but now we're making sure any new hires know exactly what they're entitled to. Make sure you take your breaks, I told our newest trainee yesterday. It's not just a suggestion, it's your right. Yes, this job has its frustrations, but it serves its purpose for now. I'm running my own small business on the side while raising my kid, and the benefits here are crucial. Having my child's braces and my prescriptions covered while I finish my last 2 years of school is a safety net I can't ignore, even in my early 40s. Dad, why don't you just quit? My kid asked recently after hearing me vent. Sometimes, I explained, you have to look at the bigger picture. This job is helping us build a better future. And now, with our recent stand for our rights, maybe it's becoming a slightly better present too. The next one is an entitled people story. I was on my way home from a bachelorette party across the country last year. I had a layover before my flight to my final destination. Thankfully, my husband had upgraded my boarding group before my trip, so I would be able to get my carry-on in the overhead compartment and not have to gate check and wait for my luggage. I was in the first or second boarding group. Before my group was called, the woman at the desk said over the loudspeaker that the flight was completely booked and they were asking for volunteers to gate check their bags. They called my group and I boarded the plane. When I put my carry-on in the overhead compartment above my row, I noticed 2 other carry-ons that looked like they belonged to the crew. When I added my bag, it filled the compartment. I sat down and eventually the flight attendants came around and closed the full compartments, including the one above me. As more groups board the plane, the flight attendants repeatedly made announcements that the closed overhead compartments are full and to find another compartment. As the last group is boarding, the flight attendants are still making announcements that the compartments that are closed are full. At this point, I couldn't even see any open compartments. 2 women, I assume mother and adult daughter, make their way to my row. The older woman opens the overhead compartment above me and scoffs when she sees that it's full. She says something like, "Our bags need to go here." She proceeds to open the overhead compartment above the row across from me and scoffs again when she realizes that it is also full. I believe she opened one more before a flight attendant came by and told her that the compartments that are closed are full. The flight attendant then has to close all the compartments this woman opened. The woman then gets into an aggressive conversation with the flight attendant about needing to put her bags above her seat. The flight attendant said that that compartment is full and she would need to find another compartment. Her daughter then goes down the aisle looking for another compartment and the flight attendant turns around to help someone else. The woman then opens the compartment above my seat and takes my bag out and puts it in the aisle. The flight attendant comes back immediately and said, "You can't do that, ma'am. You need to find another place for your bag." The woman then explains that she needs to put her bags above her seat because she has a tight connection and has to make her way to the international terminal when we land. Now I'm thinking this lady is an idiot. A, she could have paid $30 to upgrade her boarding group like I had to be able to get her carry-on in the cabin, and B, she probably should have booked an earlier flight so she could make her connection. We're flying to SFO and it's a big airport. They were going to need to run to the international terminal to make their flight. Her daughter then approaches and says that there are no more open compartments on the plane. The flight attendant then says that if there are no more compartments, then they will need to gate check their bags. She puts my bag back in the overhead compartment and closes it again. Eventually, another flight attendant approaches and joins the gate check discussion. They're discussing the logistics of getting their bags to their final destination and forms they'll need to fill out and all that jazz. But this woman keeps going back to the fact that she cannot gate check her bags. I swear she says it like 5 times, and the flight attendants keep telling her that there is no more room in the cabin. They're just talking in circles. Between all the back and forth and bringing forms and more staff into this debacle, they delay the flight by like 20 minutes. Eventually, they had to gate check their bags and fill out some forms so their bags could make it to their final destination. Anyways, I have to sit next to this crazy lady and her daughter for the entire flight. She's coughing, sneezing, and has a runny nose and is just spewing all over the place. Thank God I had a mask and wipes. I managed not to get sick. Before we land, the pilot makes an announcement that we have a few individuals who have tight connections and to let them get off the plane first. He asks these individuals to raise their hands so the rest of us know who needs to get off first. Once we land, it's a free-for-all. Everyone who can get up does, and I'm just laughing thinking there's no way these entitled women are making their flight. Even if they do, their bags won't. Anyway, thank you for watching.